The soft hiss of the glass door blended with the sound of high heels and the quiet bubbling of coffee in a paper cup. In downtown Seattle, the Nexus Dynamics Tower rose like a monument of steel and light, where young professionals in sleek suits hurried through security gates as their ID cards flashed green. In that very moment, no one noticed the man pushing a mop cart in the corner of the grand lobby. His uniform was faded, his shoes worn down at the heels, his calloused hands gripping the mop handle tightly. But for anyone who cared to look closer, there was something striking in his eyes, deep and still glowing like a lake under moonlight. He moved slowly, indifferent to the fleeting looks of disdain cast his way. His name was Elias Moore, 58 years old. And this magnificent building, every brick, every bolt, every design sketch on the wall, had once come from his own hands. But this morning, Elias was no longer the founder in their eyes. He was just the temp janitor. A young receptionist looked up, her eyes flashing irritation. "Sir, that area is for client meetings. Don't leave any water streaks." Her voice was sharp like the edge of a knife. Elias nodded gently, wiped the spot once more, and pushed his cart toward the door. The security guard near the entrance turned, raising a hand to stop him. "You're not allowed to use the executive elevators." Elias smiled faintly, pulling from his pocket an old access card, the plastic yellowed with age. "Here's my pass," he said, his voice calm and steady. The guard frowned. "These cards haven't been valid for years. Where'd you get it?" "A fake." The receptionist overheard, frowned, and stepped forward, her tone icy. "Sir, this is a top tech company, not a museum. If you're looking for someone, please return to the outer security desk. We can't let unauthorized personnel inside." The lobby fell silent. A few employees glanced over, some chuckled. One young engineer whispered, "Probably a homeless guy who found an old badge." A woman nearby quietly raised her phone, recording the scene with a small smirk. Beneath the bright white lights, Elias stood, tall hands resting on the mop handle, his expression unchanged. In his eyes was an unnerving calm, the stillness of someone who had weathered storms. He looked at the guard and spoke softly, each word clear. "I designed this security system myself. My card isn't fake. It's just that you've forgotten who first walked into this building." The air thickened. The receptionist let out a short, dismissive laugh. "You designed the security system? You sound like some engineer or executive, sir. Really, don't make me call management." A bead of sweat slid down Elias's temple, not from fear, but from the quiet ache of hearing that voice, the same tone that once carried pride in the company he built, now steeped in contempt. He was about to turn away when the elevator doors at the far end opened and a group of employees stepped out, their laughter echoing. One man in a black suit noticed the scene and asked, "What's going on?" The receptionist replied quickly. "A janitor tried to access the main elevator, said he used to design the system here." A few people chuckled. The man shrugged. "Seattle's full of stories these days. Just get him out of here before the clients see." Elias looked around, feeling every mocking gaze pierce him. His faint smile remained, but in his eyes a different light flickered, cold, deep, and unreadable. He set down the mop, straightened his collar, and said quietly, "I only wanted to see the place I once called home. But it seems you've changed the locks." A cold breeze swept through the lobby, carrying the sound of the elevator closing, like a full stop at the end of a chapter. Elias turned and walked away. His slow steps crossing the tiled floor, he once chose the color for past the glass panels that now reflected an older yet proud face. Behind him, laughter still echoed. But in the eyes of one person, a young woman named Lena from the IT desk, something shifted. She watched him disappear beyond the bright columns and felt she had just witnessed something greater than a petty argument. As Elias pushed the glass door open, the morning light hit his face. He squinted at the towering building, his lips moving in a silent vow. If they've forgotten, I'll make them remember. Behind him, the Nexus Dynamics sign gleamed under the sun, radiant, proud, yet cold as a memory long buried. The afternoon slowed like an old film reel. Outside the city, the wind drifted through the quiet suburbs where rooftops lay beneath a soft veil of mist. In the small wooden house at the end of Riverside Street, Elias Moore sat at his desk, the warm glow of a desk lamp illuminating the lines of time etched across his face. In front of him lay an old photograph, the first engineering team of Nexus Dynamics, all young, then their eyes bright with ambition. In the center of the photo stood Elias holding the early blueprint of a data processing system that would one day change the world. Back then, he never imagined that his creation would become a cold, metallic beast, beautiful, dazzling, but soulless. When the company grew too fast, Elias stepped down from his executive role, believing the new generation deserved freedom to innovate. He kept 55% of the shares and quietly watched from afar. People called him the humble icon of the tech world, but few knew that humility had slowly erased his name from the legacy he built. Years passed. Nexus Dynamics kept expanding, new towers rising like proud monuments. But what Elias had built from trust and community spirit was now replaced by profit and power. The young board members saw only numbers, not people. And today his return was not for nostalgia, but for warning. His old phone buzzed softly. On the screen, a message from LT appeared. They're signing the AI division sale tonight, 45th floor. Everything has been arranged in secret. Elias read the line again and again. He recognized the initials Lena Torres, the young engineer he had met briefly in the elevator last year. The one who still believed technology should serve humanity, not manipulate it. He opened his laptop and scrolled through the company's latest financial report. The profit figures soared, but one small line made him pause. Transfer of core system rights to Zenitech Holdings pending approval. The phrase pending approval made his chest tighten. That was his creation, the technology born from 10 years of research capable of learning and simulating human emotion. If sold, it would no longer be an innovation, but a weapon. In the small room, the ticking clock mixed with his quiet sighs. Elias stood open the steel cabinet and pulled out an old brown leather briefcase, the one he had carried during his early startup years. Inside were the founding contract of Nexus Dynamics documents proving his majority ownership and an employee badge engraved with his name on tarnished silver steel. He ran his fingers over the words, Elias Moore, founder and chief architect. Beneath the dust, the letters still shimmered like a belief that had never faded. Somewhere else in the brightly lit office on the 45th floor, Lena Torres sat silently before her computer. She was backing up internal data to send to Elias, her heartbeat quickening with the fear of being caught. Outside, CEO Aaron Bishop laughed with foreign investors men who spoke of synergy and market control, as if the company's soul were nothing but a number in a spreadsheet. Lena knew that if they signed this deal, Nexus would lose its most precious thing, the trust of those who built it. She opened her encryption software, sent the final data package, and typed quickly, I believe you still care. If you don't come, everything will disappear into their hands. After hitting send, Lena took a deep breath. and erased the entire chat history. In the mirror, her face was pale, but her eyes were resolute. Night fell. Light rain brushed against the car window as Elias drove his old sedan toward the city center. The reflections of street lights shimmered across the windshield like blurred memories. He remembered laying the first stone of the Nexus building back when it was just a small workshop of 10 people sharing one dream. Now it had become a global symbol, but no longer his. On the radio, a news anchor's voice broke the silence. Nexus Dynamics is preparing to sign a $3 billion deal with Zenitech Holdings, a move expected to usher in a new era of global AI. The voice was steady and cold. Elias pressed his lips together, feeling as though someone were reading the obituary of his own soul. When he parked in front of the glass tower, the clock read almost 8. The 45th floor glowed like a false sun in the night. Elias inhaled deeply, gripped the leather briefcase, and stepped into the lobby. The morning guard had been replaced. The night shift guard barely glanced at him before returning to his phone. The glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, and a gust of cold wind swept through. No one knew that tonight this quiet man was about to end an era of Nexus, not with power, but with memory conviction, and a truth the world had long forgotten. Night descended over Seattle, and the glass floors of the Nexus Dynamics Tower still gleamed like cold torches piercing the darkness. In the main lobby, the white lights reflected off the polished stone floor so silent that every footstep echoed. A man entered wearing a dark coat carrying a worn leather briefcase, his silver-streaked hair glinting under the light like traces of time. Elias Moore stopped before the reception desk, his eyes calm and deep, carrying the presence of someone who once belonged here. "Excuse me, sir? Can I help you?" The night shift receptionist looked up, her tone detached. "I'd like to go to the 45th floor," Elias replied, handing her a faded access card. She glanced at it and smirked. "These cards haven't been used for years. Are you maintenance staff?" Elias smiled softly. "Not exactly. I just wanted to see where it all began." "You used to work here?" she asked, half curious, half doubtful. Once he said. "A long time ago." A nearby employee overheard and laughed. "Maybe he thinks he's the founder." Laughter rippled through the lobby. Elias remained silent. His gaze lifted toward the Nexus logo glowing on the glass wall. "How amusing," he said quietly. "You speak of legends without realizing one stands before you." The receptionist scoffed. "If you're a legend, then I'm the Queen of England. Please, sir, don't make me call security." Elias kept his voice gentle. "It's all right. You're only doing your job. But tomorrow morning, everyone here will remember my name." His words made a few people pause, then laugh louder. A security guard stepped forward, broad-shouldered, his expression dripping with contempt. "You're not allowed to be here. Please leave." "I'm not causing trouble," Elias replied. "No one cares. Leave now, or I'll call for backup." Elias met his gaze, his eyes still and unwavering. "Do you know what you're doing?" "My job," the guard said flatly. "Then do it." Elias answered calmly. "But remember, not everyone dressed simply is beneath you." The room seemed to tighten. A young woman sitting near the door shivered slightly. His voice, not loud but firm, carried a quiet authority that made her heartbeat quicken. His face held a composure unlike anything she had seen, as if storms were nothing new to him. She didn't know why, but in that moment, she believed he wasn't bluffing. The guard frowned. "Are you threatening me?" Elias shook his head. "No. I'm just telling the truth. The guard reached out as if to grab his shoulder, but Elias moved aside in one swift motion, too fast for anyone to react. "I don't want a scene," he said softly, "but don't force me to make you regret it." The lobby doors opened, and a gust of cold air swept in from Elliott Bay. The light caught Elias's face, outlining him in a faint halo. "You don't have to believe me," he said slowly. "But tonight, this place will change." "What are you going to do, buy the company?" The guard sneered. "No need to buy," Elias said. "I'm only taking back what was always mine." A soft ding broke the tension. The elevator at the far end opened, spilling warm yellow light into the cold lobby. A young engineer, Lena Torres, stepped out clutching a stack of documents. When she saw Elias, she froze her eyes wide with shock and emotion. She knew instantly the man being mocked. Before everyone was the one who had received her message for help, the man she thought would never return. Meanwhile, another employee was secretly recording. The clip titled, "Janitor Tries to Enter Executive Floor," began spreading through the company's internal network. Comments flooded in. "Who is he?" His voice sounds strange. Looks more like an actor than a janitor. None of them realized they were filming the beginning of a storm. Standing beneath the white lights, Elias took out his phone and pressed a button. On the screen appeared the words, "Phase 1 initiated." No one understood, assuming he was calling for help. But on the 45th floor, the internal system suddenly registered an emergency access command with the highest level of clearance, a security code that belonged to only one person, the founder of Nexus Dynamics. Lena approached her voice trembling. "They don't know who you are." Elias turned to her, his eyes calm. "Just as they don't know what they're betraying." Above them in the glass conference room, CEO Aaron Bishop raised a glass of wine to celebrate the sale of the company. He had no idea that below him the true founder had returned, carrying a plan that would make them all bow their heads. Elias looked up at the glass ceiling where the Nexus logo shimmered and whispered, "It's time they remember who truly owns this place." The elevator doors closed, the light reflecting off his face, cold, bright, and unstoppable. The 45th floor of Nexus Dynamics glowed brightly against the Seattle night. Inside the glass conference room, acting CEO Aaron Bishop raised his champagne glass, his voice smooth and brimming with self-satisfaction. "Once this contract is signed, Nexus will double its valuation next quarter. We're making history." The three representatives from Zenitech Holdings nodded, their eyes cold as steel. At the far end of the table, engineer Lena Torres sat still, hiding her unease. The report she had submitted warning of ethical risks had been brushed aside by Bishop. "Ethics don't generate profit," Torres he had told her. "Shareholders are what create value." Now they were about to sell the company's emotional AI division, the very soul of Nexus, to strangers. The clock struck 8:10. Bishop placed his pen on the first page when the lights flickered briefly. "Old system," he muttered, not suspecting a thing. But Lena knew it was the signal for a founder-level system access. A message appeared on her phone. "I'm downstairs. Phase 1 has begun." On the ground floor, Elias Moore stepped out of a private elevator. With each step, he took the security system, lit up green, in recognition a protocol he himself had built 20 years ago. No guard dared to intervene. When the conference room doors opened, every head turned toward the silver-haired man carrying a worn leather briefcase as he walked calmly into the dazzling light. Bishop froze, then gave a cold laugh. "Who allowed you in here?" "Where's security?" Elias replied evenly. "No need to call them. I'm the one who allowed you to be here in the first place? The room fell silent. Lena stood up abruptly. This is Mr. Elias Moore. The founder of Nexus Dynamics. Whispers spread like ripples across the room. Bishop scoffed. Founder, an old man crashing $1 billion signing, your time is over. Elias set his briefcase on the table, opened it, and drew out a stack of old documents. This is the founding charter signed by me and the 6 original shareholders. I hold 55% of the shares, and this, he continued, is a federal court order to suspend all major transactions for 48 hours pending ownership verification. The laughter stopped instantly. One of the Zenitech representatives checked his email, his expression shifting as he saw the urgent notice, transaction hold pending ownership verification. Bishop went pale, his champagne glass trembling in his hand. Elias looked around the room, his voice low and steady. I created Nexus not to sell its soul. We once believed technology should serve humanity, not use humanity to serve power. Bishop tried to keep his composure, his tone sharp. You think you can just walk in here and order me around? Elias smiled. No, Aaron. I'm not giving orders. I'm simply reclaiming what was always mine. The back door opened and Elias's legal team entered. Thick stacks of legal documents were spread across the table. One of the Zenitech men whispered, "We should withdraw. This poses serious legal risk." Bishop glanced around, realizing the room's loyalty was slipping away. Elias tapped his fingers gently on the table. No one can sell the soul of a dream they didn't create. His words echoed through the silent room. The only sound left was the rain beginning to tap against the tall glass windows. Outside, the city had no idea that tonight the founder had returned and true power had just changed hands. News of Elias Moore's return spread through the building within minutes. Employees gathered around internal screens watching the man who had once been dismissed as an intruder, now standing in the middle of the conference room on the 45th floor. The headline scrolling beneath the video left everyone stunned. Founder returns, Elias Moore is back. Inside the meeting room, the air felt heavy and dense. Aaron Bishop stood frozen, his face rigid, the champagne glass still trembling in his hand. Elias looked around, his voice low and steady. I didn't return to threaten anyone, but to remind you all that this place was built on ideals, not greed. A Zenitech lawyer spoke up. Mr. Moore, we are merely executing a legal contract. If you claim ownership, please present proof. Elias nodded toward Lena Torres. She opened her laptop and accessed the internal system. On the large screen appeared a single chilling line of text majority, holder Elias Moore, 55%. The entire room fell silent. Downstairs, employees whispered in disbelief. The morning receptionist trembled as she remembered his calm eyes when she had ordered him to leave the lobby. Oh my God, she whispered, we treated him like a nobody. Bishop struggled to regain control. You can't just walk back in and take everything. I'm the legal CEO. Elias replied quietly. Legal. Was it legal when you secretly sold our core technology to Zenitech? I've stayed silent long enough. Tonight that silence ends. He placed a thick folder on the table, the papers falling one by one like hammer blows. These are records of wire transfers from Zenitech to your personal accounts. You sold out this company for bonuses. Bishop's face drained of color. You have no authority. Elias met his gaze, his voice deep and calm. On the contrary, I'm the only one who does. Effective immediately, you are suspended, and if necessary, I'll release every one of your emails to the public." The doors burst open as Elias's legal team entered. One lawyer placed an urgent order in front of Bishop. "By directive of the founding shareholder, all transactions with Xenotech are terminated effective immediately. The internal network flashed red security lockdown, founder control activated." Bishop's breathing quickened, his eyes reddening. "You're destroying this company," he hissed. Elias answered evenly. "No, I'm saving it. Nexus was born from the belief that technology should serve humanity. You turned it into a tool for greed, and greed always destroys itself." In the lobby, employees stood silently before the large screen. One young woman whispered, "He doesn't have to shout," but everyone listens. Elias looked around the glass-walled room, the reflections of each person glimmering around him. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to restore the soul of Nexus. Tomorrow, I'll announce the restructuring plan. From now on, this company exists for values, not profits." No one spoke. The sound of rain tapping against the glass blended with the silence. In the lobby, the screens showed Elias standing tall in the conference room, eyes shining with quiet power. The caption beneath flickered, "The Founder Returns." That night, no one dared to laugh. The man once mistaken for a janitor was now the only one with the power to decide the fate of Nexus dynamics, and everyone finally understood that true power doesn't need to shout it, only needs to be present. The news, Elias Moore reclaims. Nexus dynamics spread through the entire building within minutes. Internal networks, employee forums, even online newspapers were flooded with it. From the mocking laughter of the morning conversations had shifted to pure astonishment. In chat groups, one comment stood out. They laughed when he walked in, but they stood when he spoke. On the 45th floor, the conference room was filled only with the sound of rain against the glass. Aaron Bishop sat in silence, his face blank with defeat. Elias Moore stood by the window, the lights reflecting off his calm expression. "Do you know what the saddest thing is, Aaron?" he said softly. "It's not that you betrayed me, but that you betrayed the very ideals Nexus was built upon. I created this company because I believed technology could serve humanity, not trade away its soul." Bishop looked up, his voice firm but trembling. "You left, Elias. You abandoned us. The world is different now. Ideals don't keep a company alive." Elias replied quietly, "No, you're wrong. Ideals never go out of date. Only those who lose their way believe the world has changed." He turned and looked Bishop straight in the eyes. "My silence was never weakness. I was simply waiting for the right moment to speak." The calm in his tone made everyone in the room lower their heads. Lena Torres stepped forward, her voice unsteady. "Mr. Moore, the press is asking, will you return to lead the company?" Elias smiled. "No. I didn't come back to take power, but to give it. And you, Lena, will be the first person I trust." She froze. "Me. You spoke the truth when everyone else chose silence. That's the courage Nexus needs." The room went completely still. Elias picked up his old leather briefcase, nodded to the lawyers, and walked into the hallway. On both sides, employees lined up, their eyes heavy with emotion. As he passed, they bowed their heads. No one spoke, only a profound, respectful silence filled the corridor. On the ground floor, the lobby was crowded. Those who had mocked him earlier now lowered their eyes in shame. The young receptionist stepped forward, trembling. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know." Elias gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "There's no need to apologize. Respect costs nothing, yet it's worth more than everything you're chasing." His voice was low but clear, resonating through the hall. Then a single clap broke the silence, followed by another and another until the entire lobby erupted in applause. No one shouted, no one recorded. It was a sincere standing ovation for the man they had once thought was just a janitor. Elias smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank those who kept believing when the world chose indifference. From now on, Nexus will once again belong to people, not greed." He lifted his gaze toward the glowing logo on the glass wall. "No one needs to remember my name," he said quietly, "as long as they remember why Nexus was born." Elias walked toward the exit, his silhouette merging with the golden lights of the street outside. Behind him, the entire lobby remained still afraid to break the moment. An era had ended, and a new one for Nexus had begun quietly, but filled with light. The morning after the storm, the Nexus Dynamics Tower gleamed brightly under the sunlight. Employees arrived earlier than usual, their faces filled with both awe and anticipation. The night before, the man they had once mistaken for a lost janitor had become the symbol of the entire company. Reporters surrounded the building while social media overflowed with a single phrase, "The founder returns. Real power is integrity." On the 30th floor, the temporary operations room was packed. Lena Torres, newly appointed by Elias as interim chief technical officer, stood before a large screen. The words glowed across it, "Rebuilding Nexus, restoring integrity." She took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "From today, Nexus will no longer chase blind profit. All unethical contracts are hereby canceled. We will rebuild, starting with trust." At the end of the table, Elias Moore sat silently observing. When Lena finished, he rose to his feet. "Last night wasn't my victory," he said calmly. "It was the victory of those who chose to do what's right. This company doesn't need a master. It needs people with conscience." Applause filled the room, not for show, not for cameras, but from genuine respect. When the meeting ended, Elias returned to the ground floor. The young receptionist, the one who had once turned him away, sprang to her feet. "Good morning, Mr. Moore." Elias smiled gently. "Just call me Elias. Here, no one stands above another because of a title." She lowered her head, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry for that day." He rested a hand on her shoulder. "Respect costs nothing, but it's worth more than all the wealth you could ever chase. Remember that." The scene brought silence to the entire lobby. Then a single clap broke the stillness, followed by another and another, until the sound of heartfelt applause filled the air. No one commanded it. No one filmed it. Elias simply nodded. "Don't thank me. Thank those who kept their faith when the world chose indifference. Nexus will once again belong to people, not greed." Outside, reporters waited. One called out, "Mr. Moore, will you return to lead the company?" Elias smiled faintly. "No. I once built this company with my own hands, but now I want to see the younger generation build it with theirs. I only reopen the door. It's up to them to walk through it. Do you have anything to say to those who mocked you?" Elias paused, his gaze, gentle but firm. "I don't blame them. People often forget that dignity can't be measured by clothes or titles. Yesterday they relearned that truth, and I believe they won't forget it again." He left the building in silence. Employees lined both sides of the hallway, bowing their heads as he passed. No one spoke. When Elias stepped outside, the sunlight touched his face, merging with the Nexus emblem behind him, radiant, proud, and renewed. By afternoon, social media was flooded with posts, a company saved by integrity. He didn't just reclaim Nexus, he restored faith. That night in his small suburban home, Elias sat at his wooden desk writing the first lines of what would become the Technology Ethics Manifesto. The opening sentence read, "Technology doesn't need to save the world. It just needs not to harm people." He read it again and smiled. Outside, the wind stirred gently against the window. A new era had begun, quiet, but irreversible. 3 days later, the name Elias Moore filled every headline. From the man thrown out of the lobby to the one who saved an entire tech empire blazed across social media feeds. But while the world was talking, Elias maintained his quiet rhythm of life. He gave no interviews, appeared before no cameras, spending his time walking through each floor, listening to employees speak, observing the people who had once been forgotten in a system that had grown too large. On the 45th floor, now the center of restructuring activity, continued day and night. Lena Torres and her team of engineers were reopening projects buried by the previous administration. There were more than 40 humanitarian projects that got canceled. Lena said, her voice tight with emotion. Elias stood beside her, arms folded. If they were created to help people, he said slowly, then bring them back to life. Nexus cannot exist if it doesn't serve humanity. That afternoon, a young reporter from Tech Vision Weekly was granted a brief interview. Mr. Moore. She asked, "How does it feel to have regained power?" Elias smiled gently. "I didn't reclaim anything. I simply returned power to where it belongs, to what is right. Aren't you afraid the company might collapse? After all, this collapse is not as frightening as losing one's soul," Elias replied. "This company once forgot why it existed. Now we are remembering." Later that day, Elias received an invitation to a special shareholders meeting. He arrived without documents, carrying only his old leather briefcase. The boardroom was crowded, the air tense. He stepped to the podium, his calm, steady voice filling the room. "I know many of you fear that I'll change everything, but in truth I only wish to restore what Nexus has lost: trust. A company survives not because of profit, but because of its moral foundation." A major shareholder interjected, "Sir, ethics don't protect market share." Elias met his gaze, his tone firm but serene. "Perhaps that's true if ethics are just slogans. But if they are genuine belief, they create value that money can't buy. And that is the only market share I intend to keep." The room fell silent. No one argued further. Elias turned to Lena. "Starting tomorrow, relaunch the Human Tech Initiative. Dedicate 10% of our revenue to education and environmental projects. Nexus must once again serve the world, not just its shareholders." Lena nodded, her eyes glistening. A few shareholders began to applaud while others bowed their heads in silence. Night settled over the city as everyone left, except Elias. Alone in the dim conference room, he stared at the large screen that read, "Nexus Reborn." The light reflected on his face, calm and peaceful. "An empire doesn't need to be born from money," he murmured. "It only needs to be rebuilt from faith." Outside, the city glowed. Amid the flow of traffic, a glass tower shone like a lighthouse, the symbol of a company reborn, and of a man who had turned humiliation into belief and power into responsibility. A week after the shareholders' meeting, Nexus Dynamics officially changed its logo color from cold steel blue to a softer shade of jade green, symbolizing life and trust. On the massive screen in the main lobby, a new motto glowed brightly: "Technology with Humanity." Elias Moore walked slowly down the corridor, listening to the familiar sounds he once thought he would never hear again, the tapping of keyboards, the passionate debates over algorithms, the gentle laughter of young engineers. No longer were there soulless directives about profits or KPIs. Instead, there was a renewed sense of purpose, a collective belief that what they were doing mattered. As Elias passed the programming room, a young brown-skinned engineer stood up and called out Mr. Moore. "I just want to say thank you for bringing Nexus back." Elias smiled softly. "Thank you for staying. A company is never built by glass walls, but by the people who believe in it." His words spread quickly, appearing across the internal network as a reminder. Beneath the post, hundreds of employees commented, "Now I understand why they call him the founder." While Nexus was being reborn from within the media, outside, followed every step closely. That evening, the national news aired a special feature titled Elias Moore, the man who took back integrity. During a live interview, a reporter asked, "Many call you a hero, a symbol of justice in the corporate world. How do you see yourself?" Elias answered gently, "I'm no hero. I'm just someone who remembered what many chose to forget, that success isn't measured by how high you stand above others, but by whether you can stand tall without losing yourself." His words silenced the entire studio. The clip spread across social media within hours, gaining millions of views. The hashtag #RealPowerIsIntegrity resurfaced, but this time it was paired with an image of Elias bowing to shake hands with employees not sitting in an executive chair. That afternoon, in a small office on the 30th floor, Lena entered with a stack of reports. "Mr. Moore, we've restored all the humanitarian projects. The public response is overwhelmingly positive. But," she hesitated. "But what?" "There are rumors that Zenitech is preparing to sue Nexus for breach of contract." Elias nodded, unsurprised. "I expected that. They're not afraid of losing money. They're afraid of losing influence. Prepare all legal documentation and invite Malik Price, the journalist who's been following this story, for an exclusive interview." The next day, Malik arrived with an old notebook and eager eyes. "What are you planning to reveal?" he asked. Elias smiled. "Nothing. I just want to remind people that justice in business isn't a luxury. It only requires the courage to practice it." The interview took place right in the main lobby. No backdrop, no special lighting, just Elias standing there, his deep, warm voice recounting the origin of Nexus, a group of people united by knowledge, and how he almost lost everything when power fell into the hands of those who cared only for profit. When Malik asked, "What helped you stay calm that day when you were humiliated?" Elias replied, "Because I knew that if I reacted like them, I would become them." True strength doesn't lie in shouting loudly, but in standing still with dignity when insulted. The feature aired that evening, touching viewers around the world. Thousands of comments poured in. He didn't seek revenge, he taught the world a lesson in dignity. Elias Moore proved that ethics can win. The next morning, major news outlets reported that Zenitech had officially withdrawn its lawsuit and proposed a new partnership based on ethical collaboration. Nexus's stock value soared, but what pleased Elias most was the confident look in his employees' eyes as they walked into the building. That evening in his office, Lena asked softly, "Do you ever regret staying silent all those years?" Elias gazed out the window where the sunset blanketed the city. "No. Sometimes silence is the only thing left when the world is full of noise. And when the moment comes, a single truthful word can change everything." He turned back and smiled. Tomorrow we begin a new chapter. Nexus doesn't need to run faster than anyone else. It just needs to move in the right direction. Outside, the company's sign shone brightly against the night sky, reflecting the city lights, like a promise, fulfilled, an empire reborn, not through power, but through integrity. 2 weeks after Elias Moore's return, the Nexus Dynamics building was completely transformed. There were no longer the shouts of superiors or lifeless meetings. Instead, the air was filled with the sound of keyboards, animated discussions, and eager faces. On the massive screen in the main lobby, the new motto shone brightly: Technology with Humanity. Elias still arrived each day in his old sedan. Every time he passed the gate, the guards bowed in greeting. He smiled, remembering how this very place had once turned him away. Now, in the eyes that met his, there was no arrogance or fear, only respect. In the conference room on the 30th floor, Lena Torres reported all 12 previously suspended projects have been restored. The engineering teams volunteered to work overtime without asking for bonuses. Elias nodded, his tone calm and thoughtful. When people rediscover trust, they don't need orders to act. The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into long, heartfelt applause. That afternoon, Elias attended a live forum titled Leading with Ethics. Against a dark backdrop, the words, "Real power is integrity," stood out. He spoke slowly, every word deliberate. "I once believed a company was strong because of its wealth and reputation. But in the end, I learned that true strength lies in preserving one's soul amid temptation." A student asked, "If you could go back to the past, would you do things differently?" Elias smiled. "Yes, I would learn to listen sooner. Power teaches us to speak, but wisdom teaches us when to stay silent." The recording of the talk spread across the internet, garnering millions of views. The most shared comment read, "He didn't just revive technology, he revived human dignity." Back at the company, Lena waited in the hallway. "Mr. Moore, 3 universities have invited us to collaborate on an ethics in technology program. They want you to serve as honorary advisor." Elias smiled softly. "Accept it. We're not here to preach ethics. We're here to remind people of what they once knew, but have forgotten." On his desk lay a handwritten letter from journalist Malik Price. "Thank you for showing me that truth can be gentle and still be powerful." Elias reread it, his eyes glimmering with quiet conviction. As night fell, he stood on the rooftop, gazing at the lights of Seattle stretching into the horizon. The wind carried faint music from a nearby park. He murmured, "An empire shouldn't be remembered for its wealth, but for how it treated its people." Down in the lobby, the large screen was replaying the video of the day he had been expelled from the building. But this time, the caption had changed from humiliation to redemption. Employees stopped to watch. No one laughed, only silent eyes filled with pride. Lena stepped beside him and whispered, "Everyone is waiting for you downstairs." Elias smiled. "No need. They don't need me anymore to remind them what respect means." He turned away, his figure blending into the city lights. Below, laughter and music filled the once ambitious tower. Now it stood as living proof that real power doesn't need to command it, only needs the character to lead the way. A month after Elias Moore's return, Nexus Dynamics entered a true renaissance. Billboards across Seattle no longer flaunted products, but carried a new message. Technology serves humanity, not the other way around. The entire city was talking about the Nexus miracle, the story of a company that had once drowned in ambition, but rose again through integrity and faith. That morning, Elias arrived early at the office. He walked down the glass hallway, watching young faces engaged in lively discussions around their screens. In the soft morning light, the building seemed renewed, bright, warm, and full of life. Lena Torres approached holding a collaboration plan with several universities. "We've received over 5,000 applications for the new internship program," she said excitedly. "And many of them want to join not just for the salary, but because they believe in Nexus's mission." Elias smiled. "That's something money can't buy." He paused by the window where sunlight spilled across the floor and added softly, "There was a time I thought building a company was enough. Now I know you have to build people first." That afternoon, Lena organized a small gathering in the auditorium. No wine, no formalities, just a moment for employees to share what they had learned since the night of change. A young engineer stood up and said, "Before I was afraid to make mistakes, afraid of my superiors. Now I've learned that this company exists so people can be brave." The room burst into applause while Elias sat quietly, his eyes shining with pride. As the event came to a close, Lena invited him to speak. Elias walked to the podium, his warm, steady voice filling the hall. "Over the past month, I've seen something I feared was lost trust. No one can control trust. It appears only when people see truth. Today, I won't offer thanks, but a promise. Nexus will never go back to its old ways because every person in this room is the reason it exists." The entire hall rose to its feet. There were no chants, no slogans, only silent unity. Lena's eyes welled with tears. She knew that from that day on, Elias was no longer just a symbol, but a teacher, a guide. That evening, Elias left the building late. He stopped in the lobby where everything had once begun. The old mop still rested quietly in the corner like a witness. He touched the handle gently and smiled. "No job is beneath anyone if it's done with dignity," he whispered, as if leaving a message for all who had ever judged a person by appearances. Outside, the sunset bathed the city in soft orange. A group of young employees passed by and stopped when they saw him. One girl asked, "Mr. Moore, is it true you were once kicked out of this lobby?" Elias chuckled kindly. "Yes, and I'm grateful for it. Without that day, this one wouldn't exist." The group laughed, and someone snapped a photo of him standing beneath the Nexus logo reflecting the golden sun. The picture spread within hours, with the caption, "The man who rebuilt dignity." That night, back in his small suburban home, the morning newspaper still lay open on the front page, his image surrounded by thousands of applauding employees. He turned the page gently and smiled, not with pride, but with peace. Picking up his pen, he added the final line to his technology ethics manifesto. "One day when I am no longer here, I hope people will not remember me as the founder, but as the man who reminded them that ethics are the foundation of intelligence." Then he closed the notebook and looked out the window. Outside, the city shimmered in the night, reflecting the light from the building bearing the name Nexus, once a symbol of arrogance, now a beacon guiding a generation that believes integrity can still change the world. 1 year later, spring draped Seattle in a soft, honey-like light. The Nexus Dynamics Tower was no longer just a technology company, but a symbol of transformation for an entire industry. In the main lobby, once the stage of humiliation, stood a small glass plaque engraved with the words, "Respect is free." It costs nothing to give. It was the very sentence Elias Moore had spoken on the day he was misunderstood. That day, Nexus held its 1 year of renewal anniversary. There was no grand stage, no fireworks, only sunlight streaming through the glass dome illuminating the faces of those who had witnessed the company's rebirth. Lena Torres, now the youngest CEO in the company's history, stepped onto the stage. Dressed simply, she held in her hand the new manifesto. Technology, with a soul. A year ago, she began, her voice trembling with emotion. We saw a man being escorted out of the very place he founded. And that same man taught us something no management book ever could. That true power doesn't come from titles. It comes from dignity. The entire hall fell silent. Elias sat in the back row wearing a gray sweater and a thin scarf. He was no longer the CEO, only the honorary advisor. But to everyone there, he was the soul of Nexus. When Lena finished her speech, she invited him to the stage. Elias rose, walking slowly but with eyes that were still bright and steady. Applause thundered through the hall, echoing until he reached the podium. He didn't take the microphone. He simply spoke in a tone soft enough for those nearest to hear, but the silence was so complete that every word carried clearly through the room. A year ago, I stood here, but on the other side of the barrier. I was called an outsider, someone who didn't belong. And today, I see hundreds of faces that have changed. You haven't just revived a company, you've restored faith in humanity. He paused, smiling gently. Never forget, technology cannot save the world. People can. And when you treat each other with respect, every creation gains a soul. The entire audience rose to its feet. No cheers, no slogans, only the shimmer of tears. Lena stepped forward and embraced him. Thank you for teaching us to live by our values, Elias replied softly. No, it's you who showed me that what I did was not in vain. The ceremony ended with a simple gesture. Everyone signed the Technology Ethics Manifesto. Each signature was a vow to uphold the spirit of Elias Moore. As dusk settled, Elias left the building and walked along the lakeside street. The sky was bathed in gold and orange, the still water reflecting the gentle light. Lena called, inviting him to stay for the celebration dinner, but he declined. Let them celebrate. I'd rather watch from afar. He stopped beneath a row of early blooming cherry trees. A light breeze carried petals into his open hand. Elias smiled the smile of a man who had completed his purpose. That night, a short video appeared on the Nexus homepage, just 1 minute long, showing Elias speaking during the ceremony. It spread across the internet within hours, shared by millions. The top comment read, "The man once stopped by security, now changed how the world understands power." A journalist wrote Elias Moore didn't create a product. He created a philosophy. Never underestimate the quiet ones, for they are often the ones building the ground beneath your feet. That night in his small suburban home, Elias turned off the lights and sat by the window. He opened his old notebook where the last line once read, "Ethics are the foundation of intelligence." He added one more, "And respect is the common language of all humankind." Setting down his pen, he looked out at the city lights, sparkling like stars against the sky. Somewhere in the building bearing his name, young people were still working, still believing in what he once believed. Elias smiled and closed the notebook. And in that stillness, only one truth seemed to echo, a final whisper he left for the world. Never judge a person by appearance, for sometimes the one you overlook is quietly changing the future. If this story made you think, if it made you believe that respect can change the world, share it. Because true power doesn't live in noise, it lives in quiet actions that remind humanity of its dignity.